Welcome back to Boring Reviews.
Boring Land.
Oh, just kidding.
Blasphemer!
All
Hello,
right.
Boring Review Nation!
Kind of pointless.
We know all things.
All right, welcome back to Boring Reviews. Finally in the same studio. Nick here.
Gabe, Guy Tone Date.
And Gabe, we are here for, we say this all the time recently, finally another movie review. And don't be surprised if you see a few movie reviews in the next few days coming out, maybe the next week or so coming out. What are we reviewing today?
Well, today we're going to be doing Drishyam. We're going to be doing Drishyam, the original. You know, when we reviewed, first we reacted and then reviewed to the Drishyam AJ, which AJ was in, the Bollywood version. That was, 2015? We didn't review it back then, but that's when it came out. We didn't know there was an original. We did it. We're like, oh, wow, this movie's great. You know, we were talking about it. And
Loved
then
it, yeah.
the comments blew up like, oh, if you like this, you got to watch the original, blah, 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 you know. And honestly, as busy we were, I just forgot, you know what I mean? We had so many other films we reviewed. And then recently, Nick did a solo review of, a reaction, I should say, to Drishyam 2, the trailer that came out. And right away, we're like, oh, you know, we should do this. And everybody in the comment was like, you got to watch one.
I was surprised it came out so soon. It came out like 3 days later.
You know what I mean? Because it's the continuation, right?
Yep.
Drishyam 2 is the continuation.
Same actors, same story.
Of the original Drishyam. So we gotta watch it in order now to figure it out. But I'll tell you what, and we're gonna talk about this in a little bit. I think we should break this up to what we thought about the movie, then about our thoughts in general about a movie that's been made over, 5 times?
Well, let's just actually start right there because that's the most interesting thing. This guy, Jithu Joseph, all right, writer, director. I mean, this guy better be getting stack on stack on stack because, I mean, by the next year, this just tells you how popular this was. First of all, box office wise, it cost 35 million rupees and made 750 million rupees. When you translate that to American dollars, that's about $500,000 to make and over 10 million that it made in the box office, right? Exactly. And so right away, I mean, and it's a great story. We were going crazy when we watched what we thought was the original. It wasn't. This was remade in 2014 called Drishyam in Kannada, Drishyam in Telugu, Papanasam in Tamil, Drishyam in Hindi, and then also Sheep Without a Shepherd 2019 in China. And so, like, when he says it's been remade, this movie has been remade and remade and remade. So you got to give major props to Jithu Joseph, who wrote and directed. I would love to write some kind of story where everyone and their brothers like, I want to do it. No, I want to do it. No, I want to do it. And we'll get to our comparisons, I'm pretty sure, in just a little bit. But like you said, let's start off with just our overall thoughts of the movie. Rock and roll, my friend.
I'm just saying, Jithu Joseph, if you do not have representation, I know a couple lawyers that would love to represent you, my friend. Like, listen, you know what I mean? My man better get some royalties. Like,
jeez.
And I guess that if you've seen the one we saw, the AJ, or our reaction to it, okay, it's literally the same film. That's why I was shocked the whole time I'm sitting here thinking this is like, bro, this is shot for shot the same movie. Not the same idea, not the same premises. It's the same movie. Like, gimmick infringement? What are you kidding me? You know what I'm saying?
Out of control.
But, you know, for those of you that may have not seen the original, this is the original. For those of you that might have not seen this one or not seen the one we referred to, you know, I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis of the film. Basically, this dad who's a huge film buff,
which
I should say, uneducated dude, right? He himself almost self-deprecating at a point because he's like, oh, I'm just a 4th grade.
He's so honest about it. He's like, I know that I don't read a lot of newspapers.
Right.
I know I didn't go past 4th grade.
Right.
But
and it's funny because this one I did notice that one difference, or maybe I just didn't pick it up from a different version, where here he's telling his wife, you know, she was a 10th grade dropout, he was a 4th grade dropout, but that he still knows, you know, what he's doing or whatnot. And they had that kind of playful banter back and forth. I love their relationship. Their chemistry on screen was amazing. But going back to it, in any event, there's this cop he doesn't get along with in town. I remember it was Guy Tone Date in the first one. We kept calling him Gatorade.
So stupid. His name in this one, I got it right here. It is Sahadevan.
Yeah, Sahadevan. And you know what? This guy doesn't like him because he calls him out for the shady stuff he does. Like, you're police, you're supposed to be protecting us, but you're shaking down shop owners, shaking down people, taking advantage of people. So they've got some basically some tension. Make a long story short, his daughter goes on a trip. She ends up going on a trip with the son of the IG in the area, who's like the top cop, I would assume, or something to that nature. And the boy, this scumbag, takes a picture of her a video as she
hides it in the bathroom so he gets her changing her clothes
as she's taking a shower. So then he tries to threaten her, goes to her house, tries to threaten her and say, listen, I'll release this, I'll expose this if you don't please me, or if you don't do what I say. Like, you know, the insinuation is you know what, you're gonna trade this for some gloving, or I'm gonna put you out there on blast on the internet and ruin your life. Embarrass your family. So dude comes on later on that night. When he comes, the mom's there to confront them. This is how much of a scumbag this little dude is. Like, look. I won't ruin her life if you. He don't care where he's getting the loving from. And to me, that just says a lot more about his character here. And I'm gonna again compare both films in a little while. But I think that he was on such a power trip, you know what I mean? And it kind of showed that for him, I don't think it was even about the loving. It was about having people be submissive to him. Does that make sense? He, you know, trying to be a boss like his mom, like his dad, whatever. With that being said, they try to get the phone away from him. He ends up getting hit in the weakest way possible and killed. I mean, listen, if people could get killed by just getting hit on the head with a pipe, a lot more people would be dead. You know what I'm saying, dude? Man,
it's like the same thing with Jared Leto and Little Things. It was weak. One shot with the shovel. Bam.
What? These guys must be in the gym. You know what I'm saying? Working out that they could not kill somebody with one shot, one blow, any which way. Boom. So this dad, who's uneducated, fourth grade dropout, you know, as he says, a simpleton in the town, outsmarts the police, everyone.
Covers up the crime
masterfully.
Yes.
And
if you haven't seen
it's amazing.
We don't want to give any more spoilers than that, because what he says right there is it's about the first 45 minutes, but this is a 2.5-hour movie.
Right.
The joy of this film is just the back and forth, the police and him going through this mental struggle, him trying to cover things up. They tell you right away who commits the crime. It's not a whodunit.
Right.
And it's absolutely phenomenal. The story itself is absolutely phenomenal. The twists and turns, the different things that happen. I will say with this movie, because it wasn't the first time I was exposed to the story, some of those reveals kind of lost a little bit of the luster.
Impactful, yes.
Yes, because I knew what was going to happen. I was thinking it was going to be a little different, but like you said, shot for shot. And of course, obviously we know this was the original.
Right.
So it's the Bollywood version or whatever other version out there we haven't seen yet that copied it shot for shot, which at one point you say, it was so great, why mess it up, right?
Right.
The second point, if you're going to bring something out there, then you would want it to be a fresh take on it. I don't want to disparage any film, because I still like the Hindi version. I still like fabulous. The AJ version.
AJ was fabulous in it.
He was, and, you know, I don't want to really mention too much about comparisons between the two, because, you know, you're going to upset one audience more than the other audience. I think they're still both great films, but this one is the original. This is the one that the other one decided we're just going to copy word for word, basically, shot for shot. But it's all about the tension in this movie. The tension that goes back, and when you get those reveals, and I remember when we were watching the first time, the AJ version, like the reveal with digging up, right? That's all I'm going to say, right?
You're like,
when you see that. Or when the reveal with the little daughter, what she says, you're just like, no, she just sunk him.
Right.
Or, like, there's no way that he would be able to convince. Like, it's just so many crazy things. But it's written so well. And the thing I love about this character, and this one is played by the legendary actor, and I've learned that this guy is a legendary actor just recently. This guy is Mohanlal. I probably said it wrong. Plays George Cuddy, the dad. Mohanlal was fantastic. Okay.
Unbelievable.
I've already seen a few minutes of the second one because I couldn't help myself.
Oh, dear.
I already watched a few minutes, and he got in really much better shape in the second one. It's crazy.
Okay.
But in this one, he's so masterful, and it's all about the face for me. Yeah. It's all about his expressions with his acting, and you have to make a good point. Him and Meena, who plays his wife, Ronnie,
right.
those two actors, did they not seem to you like they were a married couple in real life?
That was, to me, the most
With the chemistry.
organic part of this film, of the chemistry of that family. The family unit, to me, felt right. Because one of the things that, again, in the AJ version, I think it's the Hindi version, like, the wife is much younger, if you remember. We're like, and I mean, they explain it in the film, like, that's, you know, not really her daughter or something to that effect.
Right.
But still, you know, she was like, they could have been sisters. The wife and the daughter in the Hindi one could have been sisters. Well, this was more believable, and I think that the playful banter between them going back and forth, you know, the whole bedroom scene or whatever, like, oh, you're not gonna use my weakness against me. It was hilarious. Any married man knows that's where they ask you for whatever they want. Like, all right, whatever. You know what I mean?
That was hilarious.
Dude,
I mean,
I've agreed to some outlandish things. I'm telling you, Savannah knows I've agreed to some outlandish thing because I'm in a compromising position. But
the car, man. She's talking about a car, and he's like, "There's no way." He's like, "There's no way this is gonna happen.
I love it.
I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna go to sleep." She's like, "Okay," and they're both doing like the thing. They both turn out the same second, and I love it because he doesn't just get mad about it. He kind of laughs it off because he knows he's screwed. He's not a moron. He knows he's screwed. Okay, baby, the car is fine. But I mean, there's that. But there's also the bickering back and forth. That's marriage, ladies and gentlemen. That was shown beautifully because that was marriage. You're right. The whole organic thing is fantastic. Everything in this film, and I can't remember if it was this way in the Hindi version, but I feel like just about everything in this film made sense when it happened. Right. The only thing I'm not too sure about, I'm not sure, I guess we can go through spoilers, it's 2013. But when it's a dog, right? That's buried in the burlap sack? It's some kind of animal?
It's a dog in the Hindi version, and in this version, it's a calf.
Okay. I don't remember hearing where he got that carcass from, right?
Right.
But besides that, everything is so natural, and it makes so much sense when certain things happen. For example, when the Varun guy, and he's a sleazebag, and we have a few Varuns that watch our channel. You guys are way better than this guy. But this sleazebag right here, when he goes and propositions the sister, right before that, she's walking with her younger sister home from the store. Younger sister pieces off and runs off, and you can say, oh, that was just convenient so he can talk to her by herself. But no! If you have, siblings and one's younger, they're just going to say, peace out, I'm almost home.
That happens.
You carry the groceries, I'm going to go do my thing or whatever. That's just a small thing, but so many things in this film are so organic. It was so easy to watch, even though I've already seen the story before, 2.5 hours in one sitting. It was so easy because it was so organic.
I will say that I had a couple problems with this film. It's not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination. I had a couple problems with this film, and honestly, it's the same problems I had with the first film. And what did not fit in the story? What was not organic? This kid Varun, which I forget what his name was in the first one or whatever. This is supposed to be our, intimidating, big bad. Like, that kid comes to my house, honestly, with a video of my daughter, and he's gonna walk out of there with a bloody nose. And it ain't gonna
remember, the dad wasn't there.
It doesn't matter. That little punk isn't gonna, they let him do it. And I understand it was an emotional thing. But, it upset me because I'm like, you should not react that way. And then they got really dark because mom is pleading with him, like, listen, don't do it, don't disgrace her, don't release it, because we'll all have to commit suicide. I'm like, what? That's just dark, man. You know what I mean? So I understand the level of pressure that was on them. But then if that's the case, there's no way I'm going to let that little punk, there's two of you there, women and not two of you there. He's a teenager, maybe, a young adult at best. He's not going to come over here. And like that in both films, to me, that's the one thing that just does not fit. I would have rather it have been him be maybe a little bit older, or if you're going to do it, pick a bigger actor, a dude that's buff and yoked that makes you feel intimidated. That dude in both. In one, he was a skinny little twerk, and this one, he was like more of a chunky little twerk. That dude does not intimidate me, not even a little bit. He ain't intimidating my daughter, he ain't intimidating my wife. Are you kidding me? And that to me was the one thing that did not fit. Even when he's solving the crimes, and for me, in this one, they did it a little bit better than the second one, where, you know what, you're like, oh, wow, yeah, he used, or not solving the crimes, but when he's covering up his crimes, he used movies in order to do so. He used television in order to do so. Yeah, he did, all right? You got to realize, especially nowadays, a lot of the big directors in Hollywood, a lot of big movies, they actually bring in experts, people that were or are or were former police officers. I remember watching behind the scenes for Tupac and Biggie, which was a TNT show, and they actually bought Detective Greg Kading, who worked on the Biggie case, to consult. So they bring in consultants, and it's easily believable that through television, you would learn about GPS on a phone being tracked and things of that nature. So those things were the only problem I had was the same problem. And I'm like, this kid, was it maybe just the position that his parents held? Is that why he exudes this? Is that what they're trying to say?
I think the biggest issue is you are seeing your wife and your daughter as these characters right there. Your wife and your daughter may not allow that to happen. But not every wife and every daughter of that age is going to be like, let's go. You're going to get out of my face right now. I'm going to take you out myself. Not everyone is, I don't want to say brave or courageous, but not everyone has that capacity within them to be willing to defend themselves to that capacity. And it has nothing to do with just all women in general, all daughters in general. I think that is the unfair comparison, because it seems to me like these ladies, they don't want any trouble. I mean, they were talking earlier about how there's suicides happening because of these kind of pictures, and the mom I don't think it was in her nature to be like, if you don't give that to me, I'm going to take it from you. She wasn't that kind of person in nature. So that's where, for me, I can believe it, because it's not about him and his stature, it's about the power. Yes, the power he holds. His mom is the IG, for crying out loud. So if you're going to complain that this guy is making advances on your daughter, she's not going to do anything about it. If you go and attack him, he's not going to say, oh yeah, but I was trying to force myself. He's going to say, they attacked me for no reason. So it kind of puts them in a tough situation because of who he is. And plus, I'm wondering, don't really delve into it too much, I wonder if they're thinking, like, has he shared this with other people? Like, we're in a very bad spot. Let's just get the phone for right now. And then the one thing I will say about the Hindi version, if I remember correctly, when she's going to get the phone, she uses her pole. They show a little more of her, like, trying to, and then he keeps moving it a little bit, so she's trying to get it. In this one, she just picks it up and boom, hits him in the head. So if I didn't watch the first one, I'd be like, okay, she was trying to hit his head, because it seemed that way because it was so quick. That's a small little tidbit. I did love AJ in the Hindi version. I thought he was fantastic. He played it with a little more of intensity, but now I'm getting to comparisons. As far as this film goes, I thought that one of the most surprising actors or actresses, because they were all very, very good, but one of the more surprising ones was the girl that played the youngest daughter. I thought she was fantastic. But she was fantastic. She was able to play like the happy-go-lucky, but also like when she was terrified, and that's still my least favorite scene, is like the torture and the interrogation. It goes beyond and beyond and beyond. Tough to watch. The guy who plays the Gaitonde character in this one, he is menacing just as much as the other guy was. They do a great job with all of that. I really, really like this film. As far as a few complaints I have, one being you have the ending, right? You have the ending where he feels bad for the parents.
Right.
And he wants to give them some peace of mind. And the parents are like, we don't care anymore. Just tell us so we don't have to worry if our son's going to call us or show up at the house or whatever.
Right.
And he basically says, without saying it, but pretty straightforward, there was someone that came into our house and we had to take care of it. We've been great ever since. And we're trying to make things better. For me, I still have a hard time believing that this person, whether she resigned or not, does not go right to the cops and say, I got him. He told me about it. He admitted to it. Yeah. Now we're going to put everything, because I know for a fact that he killed my son. I don't see, with someone who was willing to beat up a 6th grade girl, I don't see her just, okay, you won. We are defeated. We're going to go to America or whatever. And, whatever. That was my biggest complaint right there, because for me, with the movie that everything seems so believable, that scene, I just didn't buy it, because at that point, I'm assuming that mom, she's all in.
Right.
She was willing to go to any great length, right? Even when she found out what her son was doing, she still, but you killed my son, so that doesn't matter. It doesn't equivalent. That was my biggest problem with the film, with the story itself. But there are very few stories out there that are perfect, right? Some of my favorite films, like Rocky, it's not a perfect film.
Right.
So it's an excellent film. it's very admirable that this was the original one right here. As far as comparisons, you're right. It's shot for shot remake. The names are different, obviously. Interesting thing is Mina. I think she's in the Telugu version or maybe the Tamil version, but she plays that same role in one of the remakes, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Now let me ask you a question. Another problem I had with this film was the pacing. Now, maybe it's because, like you said, we already knew what was going to happen.
Right.
So once we realized it's a shot for shot, like, get to the good stuff, get to the good stuff. But even as organic as that a family nucleus was, don't you think we spent way too much time with it? And even the going for shopping, like, I feel like they drove it out. Like, I think in this movie it might have been 30, 40 minutes of the beginning before we actually got into the story. Right. And then what they jumped over or glossed over was the daughter going to the
camp,
to the camp or whatever, and we only see that in a series of flashbacks where I feel like in the Hindi version they got there much quicker. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Or is it just because we knew the story and we were like, all right, let's get to the good part here?
Yes, I agree with you. I do. I do think that the pacing, that does make a lot of sense, and I don't think I noticed it too much because I've seen the other version of it. But I will say that I feel like the Hindi version, and again, we're going to take off a lot of people by saying this because it's like two different audiences here. But the Hindi version, I feel like, spent more time on the cover-up and more time on helping the audience. And maybe it's dumbing down for me, but helping the audience understand exactly what he's doing. And the August 2nd and the August 4th and the August 20th, whatever it was, I felt like that was paced a little better in the Hindi version than the Malayalam version, where it kind of happened a little quicker. To your point, where the first part was dragged out a little bit. But with that being said, and I know you're not saying this, but with that being said, if you have 4 different remakes before you make yours, you can look at all those ones and pick and choose and say, I think this should be changed, this should be changed, and now our version's going to be tip-top shape. And so you got to give credit to the filmmakers who made the 5th remake, but it's still a remake of the original one. Which makes me super excited to watch the second one. Like I said, I've watched a few minutes of it. I haven't really gotten too much into the story, so I don't really know too much on what it's going to be about besides what the trailer showed.
Well, I would say I watched your reaction on the trailer, and I think that you hit the nail on the head. And that's maybe why I'm excited for this Drishyam 2, because like we said, we both said the same thing the first time. Why would you admit to it? Even if she's retired or forced retirement or resigned, whatever, it's still a mother. And maybe at that moment she's wounded, but she's going to heal, and eventually that strength and that training that she got in law enforcement is going to come back, and she's going to want justice. And it feels like, didn't in the trailer, because I didn't do it with you, but I was watching, I watch it, yeah, I also watch the trailers, and I also watch our man Nick. Didn't they show her there, like she comes back?
I honestly don't remember.
I feel like she came back in the trailer, and that was her. And if it's her, you did this to yourself, you know what I mean? Like, why would you admit to it? But I think that, again, it's easy for us to say that, sit here right now and say that, because we weren't put in a position where not only did we kill someone, but we had to dispose of a body. That's hard. You know, having to dig somebody up, whatever, put them in plastic bag, burlap sack, chop them up, whatever you did, burn, that's hard. That will eat at you. You know what I'm saying? And there's been tons of, again, I got family in law enforcement, but I got tons of story where, you know, my uncle will tell me, like, listen, dude, sometimes guys just walk to the police station and say, yeah, I did this, man, I can't, and turn themselves in. And you're like, what? Yeah, people do that. You know what I mean? Especially if they're not cold-blooded killers, if it's accidental, if it's like, you know, I hit and ran somebody and I was drunk and I went from the scene, so, you know, I felt bad, or, you know, I was with my girlfriend, you know, she OD'd, this accident, that eats at normal person,
or you have someone like Christian Bale in American Psycho, where he tried to give himself up and they said, dude, stop messing with us, you didn't kill no one, and they hung up on him.
Yeah, I know, whoops.
Spoiler alert.
I know, right? Whoops. But, man, I mean, the last thing I want to talk about this film was some of the shots. This director, there's a one shot, and I think because it's probably the toughest scene to watch, when everybody's getting beat up, right, at the police station, and you've got, is it Sadmudzin, right?
Sahad Devin,
excuse me. And he's exhausted, he's beating everybody, they won't break, and as he's panting, you first get the close-up of him, and then behind him, you see the little girl. And you yourself look, I'm getting something like, oh man, he's going to turn to her now. Even though I've seen it before, I'm like, oh. And the way he shot that's how you build tension. You know what I'm saying? That was a great scene, and I was like, and even though I know what happened in the first one, I'm like, maybe did they kind of like skip or gloss over it because it was so not in the first one, but in the Hindi version, did they maybe change that? Because that's powerful to strike and assault a 6-year-old girl. But nope, same thing here. Just, I was like, oh my gosh. Still the toughest scene to watch.
Well,
man.
there's that shot. Another great tension shot is when the family's walking out of the room because they think the beating up is done, the torturing is done, and then they close the door, and George Cuddy realizes that his youngest is not with them. No! And he wants to go back, and they're like, nope, get out of here. You're not going to be here. I mean, just that fear. And it's like the craziest thing about that as a father is staying pat no matter what when you see your wife and your daughter and your other daughter being beaten and not being like, okay, fine. And he infers many, many times, nothing's going to happen to you guys, period. Basically, I'm going to take the fall if I need to, if it gets to that point.
Right.
But just to sit there, and that's what builds a lot of tension too, because as a father, you're watching this like, okay, is he going to tap out now? Is he going to tap out now?
I would have cracked.
And later on in the film, they revisit him, and he's like, I'm so sorry. I should have stopped it before. I cannot believe I let that happen.
Right.
And she says herself, no, it's okay. One part in this movie that I forgot about, and I was honestly getting really nervous about when I'm watching, is when, after they visit the daughter's school, interrogate her, before all the beatings and stuff happen, they go to his house, and his wife's there, and he races home. They're like, what are you doing? You guys went to my daughter's school, and you did all this kind of stuff. Of course I went home. And they're asking about whatever. And the mom right away says, "Oh, but we were out of town on August 2nd, so it couldn't be us."
Yeah.
And the guy's like, "Oh, I got you.
She's
We
the
totally
first
got
one
you."
to crack. She's the first one to crack.
And I'm sitting there like, did this happen in the other one? Like, how are you gonna get out of that because you're screwed? And he's such a genius. He's like, it's like, obviously we talked to the principal. Obviously the principal wants parents to know what's going on because they don't want to take any responsibility. So obviously they told us about this incident. Right. You don't think we're informed when our daughter's being distressed at school?
Right.
And the guy's like, dang it. Like, that moment was so... I was just like, oh, they're screwed. The guy's a genius. And again, he gets his information from movies. Right. You watch movies, you get educated. And I want him to say it a few times at least, because he kept saying, I don't read newspapers, I want him to say, but I watch movies. And you better believe I learned stuff from movies. But I love the character for that, but for so many different things. I thought the acting was fantastic in this film. I want to definitely highlight... I just lost it. Here we go. Asha Sarath, who plays Geetha, the IG, the Inspector General. She was fantastic. I love Tabu in the Hindi version. Right. And I thought it was going to be a tough act to follow, not to mention, maybe I got a little crush on Tabu, who knows. But this actress is just as beautiful. And not just that, she really brings it. She's got the intensity. Right. She has that look, and she's just, she did a fantastic job.
Let me
you definitely see Tabu did a lot of inspiration from the way she portrayed.
How did the filmmakers manage to make us feel sympathetic for a woman that allowed a 6th grader, a 12-year-old girl to get beat? Because I felt for her.
Because her son, as creepy as her son is, as creepy as what he did, and it's illegal what he did, it does not warrant murder. And they didn't do cold-blooded murder, right? It was accidental murder, but because she still lost her only son, the husband says, it's a miracle child. We didn't think we could have kids.
That line got to me, yes. When he said it was a miracle child, I'm like, that was a great line.
And he talks about how we smothered him and we gave him everything he wanted. And as parents, you got to take responsibility in a small part, a big part for how your kids turn out. And they just gave him whatever he wanted, so it's no surprise when he doesn't get it from the daughter. He goes to the mom. All right, you're going to give it because I'm used to getting whatever I want.
Right.
And if my dad doesn't give it to me, my mom's going to give it to me in a different sense, obviously. Right. So I think that's how they do it. They build up the characters enough to where you see both sides, and you don't think George Cuddy and his family deserve to go down, but you definitely don't believe that her son should have died because of it. A lot of people are going to say, oh, heck yeah, he should have died. What a creep.
Right. You're right. And you don't care even about the son. You care more about the mom.
Yes.
And you feel her plight. And I'm glad you felt that way too. Because I'm like, is it because I like the villains? Because I know she should not be the good guy here. And she's fantastic. Not the protagonist. But she did such a fabulous job getting you to, and so did Tabu. That the way that role is written, it's unbelievable. That's on the director. That's really, really good writing, because anyone should feel conflicted after watching this film. Like, both sides kind of lost if you really think about it. You know what I'm saying? Both sides lost something huge. I mean, those are just some of my thoughts on this film, guys. You gotta watch it. If you made the mistake we made and didn't watch the original, watch the original. Again, the AJ version is fabulous as well, but definitely watch the original because I think it adds a little bit more to the story. It's definitely, I love the organic relationship between Mohanlal and Mina, right? They pull it off as a married couple, and I mean, some of those moments there, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been through that with my wife. You know what I mean? And it's hilarious, man. But any final thoughts on this?
I just want to say the younger daughter was played by Esther Arrow. I thought she was fantastic. So this is easily an A+ for me. I love the first one so much. This one is no different. It's better in some ways and maybe not as better as other ways to the Hindi version, but they're both the same story. A+ for me.
You know what? I had the same difficulty with this film that I had with the first one. And the first one I gave it a B, but this one is going to be an A-. For me, it was the acting, the organic relationship that Mina and Mohanlal built together as a couple. Like, that was believable. You and I are both married men. That was believable.
Absolutely.
If you haven't been married and you watch this movie, prepare yourself. This will prepare you for marriage, people. This is what it's like, all right? So it just made the story that much more authentic. So I'm going to give it an A-, and I cannot wait to see part 2 because we both said it when we did. You just can't. Why did you do that? You had gotten away with the perfect crime, and I get it. It was a grieving mother, but it's still a grieving mother, and you basically admitted to a crime, so that's going to come back to bite you in the butt. And man, I can't wait.
And maybe they did it so they can open it up for a second one, even though it's 8 years later the second one came out. I do think in the Hindi version that AJ's character, I think he makes it very hypothetical. If someone had come into my house and if something had happened, this is probably what would have happened. I think he was a little more smooth about it, where he's just like, I'm not going to give you anything. I'm not going to admit to anything. But with all that being said, let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know you've seen both versions. And yes, I get it. If you're from Kerala, you're going to favor the original Drishyam. If you're, different parts of India that loves Hindi films and the Bollywood films, you're probably going to, but which one is your favorite if you've seen both and you're being objective about it? I'm curious about that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time,
we know all things.